You just threw away a rock worth $10,000. It looked like dull, opaque trash, so you tossed it back into the riverbed. Inside that ugly, weathered exterior was a high-grade ruby or a pristine sapphire. You didn't know the signs, so you walked away from a small fortune. This happens every single day to people just like you. Most precious gems don't look like the polished, sparkling stones you see in high-end jewelry stores when you find them in the wild. They are hidden. They are disguised. They are waiting for someone with the right eyes to pick them up. If you cannot identify a raw, unpolished sapphire or ruby sitting right in front of you in the mud, you are leaving money on the table. Today, learn exactly how to spot them, confirm them, and stop walking past your own paycheck. Both rubies and sapphires are the exact same mineral, corundum. It is made of aluminum oxide and trace impurities that dictate the colour. Why does this matter to you as a hunter? Because it is the second hardest mineral on the planet. It sits at a 9 on the Mohs scale, right below the diamond. This extreme hardness acts as your primary indicator. While the river grinds quartz, jasper and agate into rounded, smooth pebbles over millennia, corundum retains its structural integrity. It resists the wear and tear that obliterates lesser stones. The naming convention is simple. If the corundum has a distinct, intense red colour due to chromium, it is a ruby. Any other colour, blue, yellow, green or pink, is a sapphire. They are siblings. They grow in the same geological environments. Finding one means you're likely standing on top of the other. Never fall for the trap of hunting for only one specific stone. Your search area for a ruby is the exact same search area for a sapphire. The high price tag on these stones is reserved for clear, crystalline, intense coloured specimens. You will find plenty of material that is technically corundum but lacks the quality for jewellery. This is industrial grade. It is used for abrasives because it is so hard it can scratch almost anything except a diamond. Never be disappointed if your first few finds are industrial grade. Finding an industrial ruby or sapphire is a massive win because it proves you have correctly identified the geological signature of the area. It confirms you're in the right spot. If you are finding the low-quality stuff, the high-quality gem-grade stones are nearby. Just keep digging, refine your search area, and filter your material more aggressively. Nature leaves a trail of breadcrumbs through specific geological associations. The first major sign is white quartz. If you see vast amounts of white quartz, you are in the right neighbourhood. Look for shale and mica schist. Mica is that shiny, flaky material that crumbles under your fingers. The more mica, the higher the probability that you're standing on a gemstone-bearing deposit. Next, identify pegmatite. This is a coarse-grained igneous rock, often related to granite, full of visible, chunky inclusions. It is rigid, often grey, and in some regions, it forms massive, inescapable walls. Pegmatite is the primary source rock for many corundum deposits. Then, look for aluminous gneisses. These are grey, granite-like rocks, but they are marked by long, distinct stripes. These contain the aluminum required for corundum to form. If you see these signs combined with zoisite, which is a light green mineral, you are in a prime location. Keep your eyes peeled for green stones with pinkish dots. That specific visual combination acts as a giant neon sign pointing toward a ruby deposit. Add basalt, marble and granite into the mix, and you have the perfect storm for a high-yield site. The river is a filter. It is constantly moving, grinding and washing away lighter, weaker material. High-quality corundum is incredibly dense and durable. It survives the journey. It settles into the deepest pockets, the crevices, and the traps in the riverbed, while the lighter quartz and mud are swept away downstream. Corundum is heavy. It will be noticeably heavier in your palm than a piece of quartz or agate of the exact same size. It settles alongside other heavy minerals like hematite and chromite. If you are finding a concentration of black, heavy, metallic-looking stones, stop and slow down. You are in the heavy zone. This is exactly where the river has sorted out the trash from the treasure for you. Look closer at the material that gravity has trapped in those deep cavities. Garnet is your biggest trap. It is common, it is heavy, and it is often red. If you're hunting for rubies, you will find buckets of garnet. Here is the difference. Garnet is usually a deeper brownish red. Ruby is a brighter, more vibrant pinkish red. If the stone looks like a drop of dark wine, it is likely garnet. If it has that aggressive neon pink punch, it is a potential ruby. Do not trust your eyes alone. Use a UV flashlight. This is the single most effective tool for field identification. Take your suspected rubies into a shaded area or wait until dusk. Shine that ultraviolet light directly onto the stone. A true ruby will fluoresce. It will glow with an intense, vivid pink. It will practically scream at you. If the stone stays dull, or just reflects the colour of the light, it is not a ruby. It might be a garnet, a piece of red glass, or something else entirely, but it is not a ruby. Keep in mind that sapphires do not react to UV light. If you are holding a blue stone and it does nothing under the light, that is normal. Do not discard it just because it did not glow. Look at the surface of the stone under magnification. Search for a weave-like pattern, similar to a tic-tac-toe board. This is the crystalline structure showing through. It manifests as thin, intersecting lines, often crossing at 60 or 120 degree angles. If you see these lines, you're looking at corundum. Sometimes you will see a phenomenon known as asterism. This is a star-like pattern caused by tiny inclusions of rutile needles inside the stone. If you see a subtle, shifting, light effect that looks like a silk thread moving across the surface of the stone as you rotate it in the sun, you have found something special. Even in low-quality or opaque stones, these internal growth lines and silk patterns are the truth of the gem. If you see them, stop digging and focus all your energy on that specific pocket. The stone might look dull on the outside, but those internal features don't lie. This is where most amateurs get fooled by glass. If a piece of glass or a common quartz pebble breaks, it creates a shell-like curved and smooth surface, conchoidal fracture. It will look sharp and glassy. Rubies and sapphires do not break like that. Because they lack cleavage, they shatter into jagged, irregular, and often dull fragments. If you find a stone that looks broken, examine the edge. If the fracture is smooth, glassy, and shiny, it is just trash. If the fracture is rough, irregular, and lacks that glass-like shine, it is likely a piece of high-hardness corundum. When analysing your haul, use the concept of winnowing. Take your concentrates and place them in a wide, shallow pan. Use a gentle circular motion with plenty of water. The goal is to let the lightest sand float over the edge while the heavier, denser gemstones stay pinned to the bottom. Never rush this. A single sapphire can be hidden under a layer of magnetite or ilmenite. Take your time, clear the sand in small batches, and inspect the residual material at the bottom. Another trick involves using a high-powered magnet. Many riverbeds are saturated with magnetite sand, those black metallic grains. If you pass a magnet over your dry concentrate, you can pull the magnetite away. This leaves a much clearer view of the remaining minerals. You will often find that the sapphires were just obscured by the black sand. Consider the geology of the bank. Often, the best stones aren't in the current flow of the river, they're in the ancient terraces. If you see a cliff or a raised bank that looks like a layer of gravel and boulders, that is an old riverbed from a time when the water level was much higher. Digging here can be incredibly lucrative because you are accessing material that has been undisturbed for thousands of years. These dry deposits are massive time capsules waiting to be cracked open. When you find a spot that shows promise, move your operation into full production mode. Create a long tom sluice or a simple rocker box if you are serious about output. By moving larger volumes of gravel, you increase the statistical probability of finding that 1 in a million stone. The difference between a casual visitor and a successful prospector is volume. You have to move the dirt to find the gems. However, stay mindful of the environment, respect the riverbanks. Erosion is a real issue, and you should always backfill your holes. A responsible hunter ensures that the location remains productive for the next season. Nature is constantly shifting and redistributing these stones. A heavy flood season will turn over the riverbed, essentially resetting the traps. What was empty in June might be loaded in October. Always recheck your best spots after heavy rains. Forget looking for the perfect gem. If you find a rough greyish-green pebble in the river and it feels heavy, don't throw it back. It is likely a sapphire. It might not look like it belongs in a ring right now, but large, rough sapphires have immense value to collectors and cutters. The weight is the constant. The colour is the variable. If you find a heavy, irregular stone in an area where you have already identified mica schist and pegmatite, you have a winner. Train your brain to stop looking for pretty and start looking for distinct. Pretty is for the jewellery store. Distinct is for the riverbed. Look for density, specific crystal structures, and the geological markers that tell you where the Earth has deposited the heavy stuff. Transitioning from a casual observer to an expert hunter requires process. Stop working the entire river. The river is a massive, inefficient sorting machine. It dumps thousands of tons of useless silt and sand into areas where it doesn't belong. Find where the river has done the work for you. Look for the dead zones, the inside bends where the water slows down, the deep pockets behind large boulders, and the crevices in the bedrock. When the water velocity drops, it loses the energy to carry heavy objects. This is where your gold, your garnets, and your sapphires are dropped. If you're digging in a straight, fast-moving channel, you're wasting your time. Find the traps. Once you identify a potential trap, do not just scoop up the surface material. Dig deep. The heaviest, highest quality stones are often buried under a layer of lighter overburden. Get down to the pay layer, the interface where the gravel meets the bedrock. This is the bedrock trap. Every crack, every fissure, and every hole in that rock is a potential vault. Use a pry bar or a stiff brush to clean out those cracks. You will be surprised at what gets stuck in there. The smallest pebble in a deep crack can be worth more than the largest stone you find floating in the surface sand. Processing your findings requires patience and a systematic approach. Do not be in a rush to identify every single stone. Wash your material thoroughly. Get it clean. Once the dirt is gone, sort by size and density. Keep your heavy concentrates separate. When you are looking at your final pile of concentrates, look for uniformity. If you have 10 stones that all look similar in weight and luster, look for the odd one out. The stone that doesn't fit the crowd is usually the one that deserves your scrutiny. If you find even one small low-quality sapphire or ruby, do not leave. Stay in that exact spot. Gems don't travel alone. If the water was strong enough to bring one stone to that location, it was strong enough to bring others. You have found a concentrated deposit. Extend your grid. Expand your search area by just a few meters in every direction from your first find. You're likely standing on a pocket that could contain dozens, perhaps hundreds of stones. Keep a journal, record the locations, the types of indicator rocks found in association with your gems, and the specific conditions of the river. Over time, you will start to see patterns. You will realize that certain tributaries consistently produce specific colors or qualities of stones. This is how you gain an unfair advantage. You aren't just hunting for gems anymore, you are mapping the geology of your region. Handle your finds with care. Even if you think a stone is low quality, do not toss it into a pile with your scrap. Store it, label it. As you learn more about cutting and polishing, or as you build relationships with professional gemologists, those industrial stones might become your greatest learning assets. They are your field samples. They are the benchmarks you use to calibrate your eyes for future hunts. The hunt is a game of probability. The more you know, the more you refine your technique, and the more you focus on the right indicators, the higher your odds become. Stop waiting for the perfect stone to jump out at you. It won't. You have to be the one to find it, to identify it, and to pull it from the earth. The wealth is there, hidden in the gravel, disguised by the mud. It is waiting for the person who puts in the work to recognize it. Go out, get into the water, and start digging. You now know exactly what you're looking for. Now go find your own piece of the earth. This is Carat and Coin. I'll see you in the next one.